Hey everybody, this is Perch, and today marks the first day of endless winter. And it's funny, I'm talking like it's in the future because I'm recording this. I'm recording this in advance. This is crazy. I don't usually do this. Anyway, um, Endless Winter is a nine-part series. It's going over the entire month of December, so 5 weeks, nine chapters. And it's oh, wow, wait a minute. You can have an event with only nine chapters. It doesn't need 22 chapters. That's crazy. Anyway, basically, what this does is it sets a kind of a holiday-ish story for the Justice League. The holiday bit being that there's lots of snow and ice, and there's this bit around endless winter, and it's crossing over in an alpha and a beta title, kind of or alpha and omega, whatever they do now. Justice League Endless Winter #1 and Endless Winter #2, and then in between all that, we get the Flash, we get Superman, Aquaman, Justice League Teen Titans, Justice League Dark, and Black Adam. And this is written by Ron Mars and Andy Lanning. And basically, it's setting up a kind of an interesting dynamic of the Justice League fighting a new villain-ish called the Frost King. And he has, or the Frost King is somebody who's fought the Justice League before, back in the 10th century. And this is going to lead to the introduction of the Avengers BC. I'm sorry, not the Avengers BC, the Justice League Viking, because for whatever reason there is this desire to have these superhero teams with prehistoric versions of themselves. I don't know. Is that stuff selling very well? The Avengers BC didn't sell particularly well. I'm always surprised to see stuff getting copied that doesn't particularly do very well. At any rate, regardless of all that, I'm sure this story is self-contained. It's a good old-fashioned kind of Justice League story. From what I believe, and I've seen an advanced copy of the first issue, but not the others, is that this will feel a lot like Justice League storylines in the 90s and the early 2000s. They did a number of these kind of multi-part series, sometimes crossing over between two books. And it's going to have that kind of classic feel to it. Meanwhile, this is kind of DC's last event during an event because death metal is also going on. It's not crossing over into death metal, but it's walking that very, very fine line between, well, you know what? Who knows, actually? We do know that Damian Wayne is left the Teen Titans at this point. We know that the Justice League kind of roster more or less lines up with the current Justice League. Not the death metal version, but the one prior to the death metal crossover issues. And we do get a sense that Superman is more or less still Superman. The characters are more or less themselves. Batman it doesn't quite seem like the Batman following the Joker War, but who really knows where all this stuff fits in. The key, though, is that bits of this story and kind of what they plan to do with the characters are going to be part of the March launch. Now, as I mentioned, this week we're supposed to start getting information about what the DC universe looks like in March, and this is a case where we're going to at least start seeing what some of those characters are like. We're going to see a focus on Black Adam and John Stewart. Both characters are expected to have quite a bit going into 2021. Now, to a large extent, that's expected with Black Adam. There is a movie with Dwayne Johnson on the horizon there that DC or Warner Media finally feels like they're trying to get ready to do. In terms of John Stewart, I think there's a lot of desire to do some things with Green Lantern. I believe John Stewart was announced to be part of the Green Lantern show that is headed toward HBO Max. So in general, it makes sense. Definitely more so than Marvel, you're going to see anything that's got some level of media tie-in with either HBO Max or Warner Media or one of those efforts is going to have a comic book companion. That is the world we're living in now. So, this stuff all lines up. But what's interesting about this, whether you're in this event or out of this event, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, is that it is kind of probably the closest bridge we're going to get, other than maybe what's going on in the core Batman book, of what we can expect in March. It's definitely lining that stuff up pretty well, and that's indicative, at least, or maybe reassuring to people who are concerned that the DC universe, still concerned the whole DC universe is going to radically turn around and change. There's a lot of, not to go off on a tangent, but there's a lot of news around DC right now, and a lot of things being thrown around that I've seen lately that are like patently untrue. Like, I'm not talking about the whether the books get canceled in July or not, just sales things. And it's interesting because it's like the same lie is being repeated over and over and over and over and over, to the point that people are just kind of regurgitating it, but it bears no resemblance in fact. And maybe I'm just naive or late to the party, and this has always been going on, but seems to be happening a lot right now with DC. At any rate, what to expect out of this comic? I mean, nothing terribly long lasting. It's relatively self-contained. I think DC is trying to make this Justice League Viking thing a go. And it's an opportunity to have comics with snow on them, in theory, for winter and some other things. But they do look like it's not completely divorced from current comics. Aquaman, for example, is picking up on where Kelly Sue DeConnick is leaving the issue, where Aquaman and Mera are on their honeymoon. We've got some bits with, as I mentioned before, with the Teen Titans and with Justice League Dark that are picking up the pieces of where their comics are currently at. So this isn't a completely timeless story that fits nothing, but it is definitely self-contained. It's definitely 9 issues. I think what's interesting is if you read between the lines with some of these comments that Ron Mars and in a few cases, Andy Lanning are saying they're talking about future plans, which at least indicates that either they're tangentially or are involved in whatever's coming out in DC in the future. So that's some interesting stuff. I guess the other person who comes in onto all this is, I know that there is a desire to do more with the Swamp Thing coming into the next year, and then in this Justice League Viking approach, I'll be surprised if they don't go back to it. You got Hippolyta, you got Swamp Thing, the Viking Prince, and Black Adam as this kind of team from the past. So what's interesting, you talk to stores, and overall there's not a lot of excitement, I would say, over on this. The problem is it's kind of tucked away between kind of the big conclusion to death metal that's sucks a lot of air out of the room just because of what it is and everything that it's doing. And then you have Future State, which already many have come to the conclusion is a holding pattern type event for DC between the end of death metal and March. And so this just becomes one more thing that's kind of stuck in there. So I'm not hearing a lot of people excited about it. That said, this event, as opposed to Future State and largely death metal as well, probably feels a lot more like the classic DC that a lot of people often clamor for. They want this DC that resembles kind of some of the 90s and the 2000s era of the Justice League, and this feels like that kind of adventure we're going to get, very, very clean cut. But the writers are promising that there's a number of seeds in this story that are going to play out throughout 2021, and that they're if you're interested in kind of getting your first peek at what the world of DC in March will look like. And I having read the first issue, I don't see it necessarily, but maybe it's in there somewhere else. I don't know. But as this story progresses, we're supposed to be on the lookout, because this is going to be our most clear look of what's going to happen, and probably a little bit of a clearer look than what we're getting out of the end of death metal. And and then I think we're waiting until late January, February for some of the Future State books to really do the same. So here we go. Endless Winter. Again, not a lot of people super pumped for this event, at least as far as I can tell, but DC's doing it anyway. So I guess a question goes to you. Are you buying this? And I'm curious actually about 2 things. One, if you're, say, a Flash reader or an Aquaman reader, are you going to then pick up all the other titles? Are you going to go all in, or are you just going to stick with Aquaman? Or what are you doing here if you are currently buying the book, and then this thing comes along where, say, you're buying the Flash every month, and then it's Flash 767 and it's chapter 2 of 9. Like, are you buying the others, or what are you doing exactly? And then other than that, if you're not buying these issues, do you have a desire to pick all these 9 issues up in trade? Is this the kind of thing you've been wanting? Kind of a standalone event where we get to see the Justice League just be the Justice League? Is that exciting to you? Let me know in the comments below your thoughts, your opinions. Otherwise, like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications. As always, thanks for listening.